Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube storytelling channel. This is Hua. I hope that you are having a fabulous Friday. The weather here is about 70 degrees. I hope that you are staying well and healthy wherever you are. This is chapter 3 of Cryptomnesia, and I hope that you have been enjoying the story. Please leave me a comment and share if you love it. Again, this story contains adult language and content. Please listen with headphones. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
I go to work while you still sleep. I don't wanna argue cause it's never worth a fight. Oh na na, oh you're good with life.
He was sitting by the fireplace when Francesca arrived home later than expected, and her heart was already slamming in her chest. She didn't mean to be late, but traffic had been terrible. Not to mention, her food had been stolen by a homeless man. The way how Pierce sat, almost lopsided in his chair, told her that he was drunk. The whiskey bottle and glass cup on the table told her everything she needed to know. She was a beast in board meetings, but when it came to dealing with Pierce, she was nothing but a pile of dust. She couldn't speak a single word, and her entire body became weak. She stepped on a floorboard, and it creaked. His body shifted, and she saw his head lift up. The flames from the fire made his face glow, and she pushed down the fear in her throat. "Where were you?" he demanded. "Do you know what time it is?" Francesca cleared her throat and made her way to where he sat. He was wearing a wrinkled white button-down shirt, opened halfway, and a pair of pants with one pant leg pushed up. His dark hair strand fell over one eyebrow, and his handsome face glared at her with a hatred that she knew all too well. "Traffic was terrible, Pierce," she said. "I'm sorry." He extended a hand to her, and she took it. He yanked her to his lap, and he pushed his hands inside her shirt. One of his fingernails scratched against her flesh, but she endured the pain. He squeezed her ribs, and then he gazed into her eyes. It was a hollow look, and she knew it. It was the direct gaze he gave her before he was about to hit her. And just as she thought that, his hand flew across her face, and she was shoved off his lap. He stood and kicked her in the ribs twice, where she let out a breath, heaving and gasping. He bent down and yanked her up by her hair, pushing her toward the wall. "Why do you make me do this to you, huh?" he asked through gritted teeth. "You know what sets me off, and you do it deliberately, Franny. Why? Is it because you can gloat after and make me feel like shit? Is that it?" She sobbed, large tears rolling down her face. "No, Pierce. I love you. Why would I hurt you?" He smiled and shoved her away as she crumbled to the ground, her hand against her rib. "I love you too, Franny. But you can't seem to understand me at all." He turned to her and bent down to touch her cheek. "Tomorrow, I need you to get me into the boardroom with you and introduce me as your new right-hand man. When we marry, I will be taking over your position as CEO. The board will respect me, and if they don't, I will replace them. Is that understood?" Nodding, she replied, "Yes." He bent down and kissed her violently before he walked up the stairs. Francesca let out the sobs she'd been hiding and covered her face with her hands. She shoved at her eyes and stood on shaking legs. Her ribs were probably bruised as she made her way to the guest room where she slept when he was drunk. As she sat down, her phone buzzed, and she turned it over to find her mother calling. Now, out of all moments, she cleared her throat and answered. "Franny, are you okay? You sound upset," her mother, Callista Song, said from the other line. "I'm fine." "What did you do to him?" Laughing, Francesca replied, "Mother, did it ever occur to you to ask what he may have done to me?" Franny, I know you. Pierce wouldn't get upset if you just listen and obey. Rolling her eyes, she replied, Obey? What am I, an animal to be tamed? Franny, whatever, Mother. What do you want? Your wedding dress fitting is tomorrow at noon. I was calling to see if you wanted me to pick you up. Francesca looked down at her engagement ring and let out a long breath. No, I'll meet you there. Good night, Mother. She hung up and quietly sobbed into the dark night. How had she, a woman who graduated summa cum laude, become a victim like this? She had never seen herself this way, and she was now trapped inside something so deep like this that she had no way out. It all started with a single glance and a smile that took her heart away, and Pierce had been the perfect man. Before knowing how rich she had been, knowing that he could own half of everything if he only married her. And then it all changed when he did ask her to marry and she agreed. The monster that lived beneath everything came out, and she couldn't walk away because she loved him. But what was worse was that he had taken control of her company, seizing everything she had built, and the last thing he wanted was the title of CEO. He managed to make her mother sell him her voting shares, and he held over 25% of the company wealth. She had to figure out how to get everything back in her control before she could boot him out of her life. You look tired. Francesca cleared her throat and shoved the black strand from her face as she looked in the mirror. She was wearing an off-the-shoulder wedding gown that had beautiful beadings all through the gown with a mermaid-style tail and train. Her mother, Callista, was standing before her wearing flannel shirt and jeans with her hair in a long braid, watching her with concern in her eyes. You mean I look like shit? Francesca said with bitterness in her voice. Her mother rolled her eyes and replied, Why do you fight me so much? Forget it. She turned to go and moved too fast. She gasped from pain, and her hand immediately went to her ribs. Her mother came to her with concern, and Francesca ignored her. She slowly walked back to change, and as she took the dress off, slowly, seeing the bruise on her ribcage, she inhaled a breath and suddenly dropped to the ground, pain escalating to her shoulders. Mom, she said through gritted teeth. Franny? Her mother pulled back the curtains and screamed when she saw the state she was in. Franny, oh my God, what happened to you? Francesca felt her body break into compulsive shakes, and she blacked out. I need you well, Luke. That's why we're here. Luke rolled his eyes, feeling the anger seep into his soul as he glared at Hudson. Early this morning, his friend had driven him to the hospital to see a therapist. He was now in the waiting room trying to fill out a form, remembering his moments back in college. And this was nothing like college because he was well. He was better than ever, in fact, and Hudson was being an asshole. He didn't even care to check any of the boxes on the form. Without his consent, they couldn't do anything to him. He already knew the process. As he flipped the pen around, a rush of nurses came and an ambulance pulled up as the medic team came in, pushing in a gurney, and his eyes couldn't believe who was there. He stood up as an older woman followed behind, and the nurses took her into the ER room. Luke? Hudson asked. It's her. Again? Are we having this conversation again? Luke grabbed a hold of his collar and yanked him up. How long have we known each other? Years, Hudson said, his voice squeaking. Then stop treating me like a stranger, and believe me when I say I am fine. Go to the office and take care of business over there. I'll be by later. Hudson's eyes held a strange gaze as he simply turned and walked out, turning to glance at him once before leaving. Luke discarded the form and walked toward the ER room, where he found the older woman sitting on a chair. Her hair was in a braid, but loose strands had escaped. Hello, he said. She looked up and a tear escaped from her eye. Oh, hello. Are you all right? He asked. She frowned. Are you a doctor here? Shaking his head, he replied, No, I'm not. I saw your daughter being brought in. I know her. She stood up. You know her? You know my Franny? She stopped herself and forced a laugh. I mean, you know my Francesca. The name made his heart do flips as he forced himself to remain calm. I met her yesterday at the cafe. There was a homeless man who stole her food, and I was there. I witnessed the whole thing. Oh, she didn't tell me anything about that. And then she smiled and extended her hand. I'm so sorry. I'm Callista, her mother, and you are... He took her hand. I'm Luke. And then the sound of nurses screaming had him turning around as he saw a tall, handsome man barging in wearing a black suit. Callista, where is she? He asked. Pierce, don't. She's in the operating room. What the fuck happened? He asked. Then he turned to Luke and frowned. Who the hell are you? He's no one, Callista said quickly. He's just someone Franny ran into yesterday, and he recognized her. He came to say hi. And then she took the man named Pierce by the hand and pulled him away, where she whispered something to him. The two were talking, and Luke felt as if his world had turned upside down. In his dream, he remembered this man, because it was this man who had fired an arrow, killing the woman he loved. His hands curled into fists, and then the man turned to glare at him. What are you still doing here? This area is family only. Luke forced a smile. I'm leaving. As he turned and took a few steps away, the door opened and the doctor stepped out. He slipped into one of the rooms and opened the door enough to listen. Doctor, what's wrong with her? Her mother asked. She has a punctured lung from an injury to her rib. It looked as if she came into contact with something that hit her pretty hard. Did she have an accident or something? The doctor asked. No, the man interrupted. But she did fall down the stairs at home. Okay, but that shouldn't give her the injury I see when I look at the x-rays. This injury is close-up penetration, which means an intentional strike to hurt her. What? Her mother asked. Who would have done that? And then she added, the man I was talking to, he said that he witnessed a homeless man take her food. I wonder if he did something to her. What? Pierce asked. When did this happen? I don't know. Luke took that moment to slip out of the room, and he heard her call his name. He turned around and she came running to him, grabbing his hand and pulling him toward where the doctor was. Can you explain what you saw? Luke watched as the man before him looked at him with a deep hatred. He cleared his throat and turned his attention to the doctor. We were at the cafe yesterday afternoon. A homeless man came and stole her food, but he did not injure her. He simply took what didn't belong and ran out of the cafe. And you didn't stop him? The man asked. I saved her from being trampled upon. That wouldn't explain how deep the penetration of the injury to her ribs is. This is an upfront injury, the doctor said. Luke felt his hands curl into fists, and then he shot the man a cold glare. You mean like someone purposely kicked her? The man then turned his gaze to him and tightened his jaw. Yes, the doctor said. Exactly. Doctor, if you have anything else that is medically related, let us talk in private. This man here is a stranger who has no purpose here, the man said with a heated gaze. Luke smiled at them and turned, walking away, and he knew instantly everything that had taken place. He knew the man had hurt her, and if this was anything like this dream that he's always been having, he needed to get her out of there. The question was how. The IV that pumped beside her woke her up, and Francesca stirred, feeling groggy, and her mouth was like cotton. The hospital gown that wrapped itself around her was uncomfortable, and she looked at the multiple needles in her veins, cringing at the pain. Her mother was sitting in the chair, her neck crooked in the corners, trying to find a comfortable position. She softly whispered for her mother, and she woke up, coughing, and then standing and walking to her. Franny, are you okay? Do you need any pain med? What happened? She asked. You were going into shock, so I brought you here. The doctor found that a broken rib had punctured your lung, causing you to have seizures. They had to do an emergency surgery on you to fix the problem. After a few days of healing, you should be okay. And then her mother's eyes filled with tears. Honey, tell me the truth. Did he do this to you? Francesca cleared her throat and fought the tears that threatened to spill over her cheeks. I'd rather not talk about it. Franny, what did he do to you? You used to be so brave. Now look at you." She shot her head up and glared at her mother. "I could say the same thing about you, too." Her mother stepped back, shocked, as she opened and closed her mouth. "What are you talking about?" She choked on her tears, and she shoved at her eyes. "You, Mother, was supposed to be on my side. Yet you allowed him to penetrate the deepest parts of me where he could hurt me in the worst way. And I could do nothing about it. Do you know how much of my heart you ripped out?" Callista laughed and shook her head in disbelief. "Pierce is right. You are losing your mind. He told me so, but I didn't want to believe him. You need professional help, Franny. Blaming other people for your mistakes isn't the answer. And selling your shares to him is?" Her mother stepped forward and laughed. "Is that what this is about? Me selling my shares to him? I have every right to sell it to him. He's a monster, Mother." She shoved at her cheeks. "You asked me if he did this. You want to know the truth? Yes, he did. He kicked the shit out of me yesterday because I came home later than expected. There was traffic, and I couldn't help it. He was drunk, and he took it out on me. I can't begin to tell you how many times he's apologized with a pathetic excuse." Callista took her hands. "What are you doing to him to make him treat you this way?" "Nothing, Mother. I've done nothing except cower like a dog and treat him like he's the king of the world. I can't speak against anything. And when her voice broke, he doesn't even make love to me, Mother. He just takes it whenever he wants to." "He's a man," Callista said. "He's raping me, Mother. He's beating me. And you sold your shares to him. And now I can't do anything about it because he has control. I worked my ass off for this company, building it from the ground up, and he would take it away from me." Callista ran her hands over hers and a tear dropped from her eye. "I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't know. But I want you to know that it's too late now for anything to happen or to change. You just have to accept your fate." Francesca couldn't believe her ears. She watched as her mother broke before her and gave her a light shrug. "How can you ask me to just accept my fate, Mother? Shouldn't you fight for me? Shouldn't you do something to help me? Pierce is a good man. He will love you." She yanked her gown open and showed the surgery stitches to her mother. "Like this? Is this what you call love?" Callista pulled the gown over her and she let out a sob. "Get out of here, Mother. If you are here to tell me to just endure, I want nothing to do with you. You are the reason I am like this. You made the decision to love him, Franny, not me." "Yes, it's my fault, Mother. Everything is my fault. It's my fault I'm beaten and raped. So just let me die this way, and one day I'll ask the gatekeeper to turn me into a rock in the next lifetime. Just get out of here." Francesca sobbed and turned away as her mother made her way out of the room. The silence ate at her, and she let out a cry that felt foreign to her ears only because she'd never been allowed to cry so openly at home. Here, in the safety of a place unlike her home, she bled her heart out in tears that were kept hidden. She cried her soul out for the torture she'd experienced at the hands of a man who was supposed to love and honor her. Luke watched her sleep in the hospital bed, and his inside was shred to pieces. He never left. He kept himself in a place where no one saw him and listened at her door. When her mother left the room in tears, he came to stand outside and listened. When he heard her weeping, his heart broke, and he felt the need to punch the man called Pierce. How could he torture her like this? It took a long time before she actually went to sleep, and when he entered, she was sleeping on her back, her hospital gown hiked up and opened slightly where he saw the surgery wounds. He had sucked in a breath and saw the bruised ribs. God damn, what a coward Pierce was to put his hands on her. He heard all of it, and he knew what he needed to do to help her. If he could do this, he would be able to turn things around for her and help her keep her company and her name. This wasn't his style of work, but for her he would do everything. This was a new feeling, and he was frightened. But to chase this, to figure out where it led to, perhaps it was his purpose in life. And for once, he wanted to make sure that he could save her, unlike in his dreams where she kept dying. She stirred, and when she opened her eyes, he stood and came to sit beside her. The moment she locked gazes with him, the fear settled into her face, and she pushed herself away from him. Her gaze fell onto the call button, and he smiled, pushing it closer to her. "You can press that button at any time," he said. "I won't stop you. But I urge you to listen to me first." "Who are you?" "My name is Luke Tai. I own a company where I buy companies from people and sell them off into parts. I overheard you and your mother talking." "That was a private conversation." "I know, but I can help you." She frowned. "How?" He moved toward her and knelt down. "You'd have to trust me completely and let me buy the company from you. I would start to break it apart, getting into the minds of the board members. He will either have to convince the board he belongs, or else I'll take over his shares." She looked away. "I don't even know you. How can I trust you?" "Do you trust Pierce?" Looking at him, she replied, "Compared to you? Yes. Even if he put you in the hospital." She looked away, and he continued, "A man who hits a woman is a coward, Francesca. I may be a stranger, but my hands have never touched a woman in violence. Now, I heard everything you said to your mother. The day you get married is the day this offer is no longer available. But right now, we can still figure out how to win and give you back ownership." "I don't even know you. Why are you doing this for me?" she asked with tears in her eyes. "That's for me to know. Just trust that it comes from somewhere good." She watched his eyes and then lowered her gaze. When she looked back up at him, he saw the hurt and pain that had been living with her. Her lower lip trembled as she swallowed down her pain, small sobs escaping from her lips. "You are the first, nicest person to me since a long time," she whispered. "I've been lied to for so long that it's hard for me to trust anyone. How do I know I can trust you? And how do I know you won't play me a fool? If it doesn't work, you won't be any better off than you are right now." Looking at him, she asked, "And what if it does?" "Then you have found a new way to live without the bastard. I say that's worth trying, don't you think?" He extended his hand to her. "What do you say, Francesca? Do we have a deal?" She looked at him and whispered, "If you lie to me, I'll take your heart out." Smiling, Luke replied, "If I lie, I'll take my own heart for you." Pierce held the bouquet of roses in his hands and blew out the hot breath as he reached the hospital room Francesca was in. He didn't need this, not now, but here she was, healing while he waited to gain control of the company that should belong to him. As he opened the door, he found her sitting up, looking out the window. She turned to him, and he saw how pale she was. It wasn't that he didn't love her. He did, but there were things she did that pissed him off, like not signing over her part of the company to him. She was only a woman. What did she know about running a business as this? "You look better. How do you feel?" he asked. She shrugged and replied, "I'm alive, so I guess that's okay." He handed her the roses and she stared at him. And then she looked up at him with hollow eyes. "What is this?" Laughing, he replied, "What, you don't know roses when you see them?" "I mean, is this your way of apologizing for putting me in here?" His smile faded, and he dropped the flowers on the table. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with her. Clearing his throat, he asked, "What do you want? An apology from me? You want me to go down on my knees and say I'm fucking sorry?" She shook her head and tears filled her eyes. "You won't mean it?" Anger filled him, and he stepped toward her, yanking the blanket from her, and she drew back in fear. "Why do you tempt me so, Franny? Why can't you just be like other women?" "What do you want me to do? Obey you and just agree to you destroying my life?" He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward him violently, where her teeth clattered together. She let out a soft groan of pain, and then he heard someone walking in. Turning around, he watched as the man who her mother introduced as Luke entered. He instantly let go her hand and turned to watch as the man came in as if he belonged. "What the hell are you doing here?" Pierce asked. Smiling, Luke replied, "Finish what you meant to do, please. I'll be the witness for her." "What?" he asked in shock. "Do it. Please. Put your hands on her again." Pierce turned to look at her and then back at him. "Who are you?" "He's here for me," Francesca said. He shifted his head back to her. "He's here because he works for me." "Since when? Why wasn't I notified about this?" She gave him a glare. "I own this company, and I make these decisions. Not you, Pierce." "Luke is my new CFO." Pierce almost felt his legs give out on him, and he laughed, although what he truly wanted to do was beat her. "CFO? You cannot make those decisions without the presence and vote of the board." "Here," Luke said as he walked toward him and handed him a folder. "Go ahead. Read it. And if there's anything you don't understand, let me know and I'll clarify for you." Pierce smacked the folder away and papers flew to the ground, scattering to the corners of the room. "I own 25% of the shares here. Not all board members have voted." Luke smiled and crossed his arms. "You own 25% of the shares, yes. But there's a little something that you overlooked. You only own shares. You are not a board member. You cannot veto anything based on what she does. When her mother sold her shares to you, the board members did not give you a seat. You hold shares only. You cannot make decisions." "Bullshit," Pierce cried. Then he turned toward her and reached for her, but he felt his hand being yanked back. Before he could predict it, he was thrown against the wall and he lost his breath as he fell to the ground. He saw Luke walk to stand before her, and then he bent down to his eye level. "What you did to her will never happen again. If you even look at her or think of her, I will be the nightmare you will deal with." "Who the hell are you to even declare this? She's my fiancée." Right as he said this, the ring she wore on her hand was thrown on the ground. Luke picked it up and put it into his shirt pocket. He pushed himself to sit up and Luke stood. "Get out of here. Tomorrow I'll swing by to talk to you about the company. I'm not signing away my shares." "Oh, you will after I'm through with you." Pierce stood and stared at her with a deep anger and hate. "We're not done." Turning around, Luke replied, "Yes, we are. Now get out of here before I tell the doctors where her injury really came from. You will no longer touch her or even look at her again. If I catch you doing either, I will gouge your eyes out and feed them to you. Are we clear?" Thank you for tuning in. Chapter 4 will be out shortly.
I remember when we woke up, how your body looked like porcelain in the light. No complaining, we were alright. But then again, I thought we were one of a kind. Oh, na na, oh, you're good with lies. Oh, na na, wish I wasn't right. Now every morning when I wake up, you're late so close, I gotta push you to your side. I go to work while you still sleep, I don't wanna argue cause it's never worth a fight. Oh, na na, oh, you're good with lies. Oh, na na, wish I wasn't right. Whoa, 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 what a lovely mess you made. Nothing's gonna make me stay. What a lovely mess you made. Nothing's gonna make me stay. When we began here, it was simple. Now all we do is turn nothing into rain. And I've been acting all insane. I feel you bringing out the worst inside of me. Oh, na na.